Climate justice is joy because the climate crisis is violence. So if we get it right, we get joy. You cannot restore what has been broken. You cannot heal without joy and without that aspiration for joy.
Hello, and welcome to the second installment of the Bedford 2025 Summer Book Club podcast chats. Today we have Alexandra Smithie. She is our summer communications intern, and today she's going to be sharing some of her favorite parts from the second section of the book. So that's page 135 to page 303.
The chapter that we're going to be talking about is called Kids These Days, and it's in the section Culture is the Context, and it starts on page 238.
And so in this interview, we hear from two of the organizers of the 2019 climate movement. There was a big march, 300,000 people in New York. So one of the loveliest quotes of this interview is on page 239. It says, "This is your reminder that the only thing more humbling and powerful than fighting for Mother Earth is finding those warriors who care just as deeply as you. Those are the people to keep close." And as inspiring as it is to see a bunch of youth mobilize, what I think is equally inspiring is to see the older generations who came out. So Dr. Ayana, our author, was at this event, spoke at this event, as did Bill McKibben, whose interview is a little earlier, still in this section. And what I love about that is having everyone come together, not just the young people. A lot of times when we talk about climate change, there's this general consensus that, oh, that's the problem of Gen Z or a problem for the millennials. And everybody else, it's too late, it's off the hook. And as a young person, I find that really hard to stomach because we need absolutely everyone on board in this fight. You know, just because you are older, you might be retired or you might be well established in your career, you're not really going to be able to make big lifestyle changes. That doesn't mean that you aren't part of this fight with us and that we don't need you more than ever, because you are established. You have a career. You know how the economic system works. You know how politics work. We don't. We're young. You have to guide us through all of those systems so that we can transform them the way we need to.
Too many times older people will say, oh, the damage has already been done, our generation has already done enough damage and caused too many problems, like now it's your responsibility to fix all the damage that we've done. And often it's put in a kind of ironic or sardonic tone, like, oh, sorry about what I did, but you know, that's going to be your problem soon. And it's not, it's everybody's problem, because it's not a distant event in the future. Like, climate change is happening right now, and so to push it off as like a problem that we are going to have to solve when we grow up is just not true, because I mean, we should have started like 50 years ago. So start today is better than starting tomorrow. Is better, exactly. And everybody who is alive should be working on it and not just passing on their responsibility to future generations, because that just wouldn't do anything, because then we could pass it off to future generations.
Right, we sure
too.
could. Yeah, but we're not going to.
Yes.
And so you should stand with us. Every generation has different assets that they can bring to the movement, and we need all of that. We need all strengths, all sorts of knowledge. Everyone's invited. Many people, especially older generations, will say, oh, it's too late for me to join the movement. And that's one of the worst things that you can say. And one of the things that makes us the least hopeful, and that squashes action. So, you know, the narrative that it's never too late is one of the best performing narratives in the climate space. That's what gets people to act. That's what gets people to feel excited and feel hopeful. So take the words "it's too late" out of your vernacular, because we can't have that. We can't have that. It's too late. It is too late for a lot of things, but not for hope.
Yes. And it's never too late to change the way that we talk about climate change and how it takes up space in mainstream media, in TV and movies. Like, I've never seen climate change depicted in like a movie or TV show.
You get either Don't Look Up, which that wasn't good, or Apocalypse. And so when I think of the future, like, that's kind of all I can imagine. It's just mass destruction and like the human race just fails. That's not a future I want to imagine myself in, and So what are the alternatives? What could another future look like, and how do we build it now?
And that's why so many people are so turned off by talking about climate change, seeing it on the news. Like, you know, if a climate special comes on, you just turn off the news because you don't want to be feeling depressed and hopeless and like everything's getting worse all the time. So, you know, even though there's a huge majority of people who are very concerned about climate change and they feel personally responsible and they want to help, they never talk about it with their family and friends. They never consume media about it. I feel like I can't really talk about climate change without people kind of like rolling their eyes a bit.
Well, people ask me what I do for work, and I'm like, oh, I work at a nonprofit or an environmental nonprofit. And they're like, oh, it must be so hard. Like, how do you deal with all of the bad news?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, I feel more empowered doing this than I would doing anything else. And there is so much hope, and there's so many amazing people in the community. And then the entire theme of this book is that there's hope because the solutions are there. We have the solutions. We need the willpower to put them into place on the scale we need them to. But that's incredibly hopeful and incredibly exciting. So, you know.
And that's how we should be framing our climate narrative is this is so exciting.
Yeah.
We have an almost like utopian future
Yeah.
that we could implement.
It's up to us.
Exactly. If we wanted to, if we made the right choices, if we cared, if we were mobilized, like that should be the narrative, not just like climate doom, because that's not really productive. And so mainstream media and, you know, movies and TV have the responsibility to not act like climate is just like a, you know, 1 hour a year special.
I do want to mention some of the sections in this book talk about the Inflation Reduction Act and how that is a source of hope because it had many climate solutions and rebates and incentives to make climate action easier. Now we know that H.R. 1, or the Big Beautiful Bill, has passed, and so that dismantles a lot of those IRA incentives. So that's a gut punch. You know, we're preaching this, be hopeful, the future's great. That's hard to do when there's all of these major losses. And so we've got to grapple with the fact that wins and losses are happening at the same time. And just because we find it hard to be hopeful in one moment does not mean that we can just give up. You know, you don't have to be hopeful to take action. That's something Ayanna says. You can still use your frustration and use your anger to mobilize you and to ultimately get back to that hopeful place where you're envisioning a good future.